Thank you all for joining us for the virtual convention of the California National Party on October 25th, 2025. I'm Sean Forbes. I'm the chair of the party, and I wish to thank everyone from Antifa for joining us. I enjoyed that everyone got their checks from George Soros. So again, appreciate you guys putting in the hours and putting in the time to help out the movement. So that all being said, yes, again, we're under attack by a real conspiracy, not Antifa. Antifa is not a thing. Antifa is actually anyone who wants to be anti-fascist. And the California National Party is definitely a party of anti-fascism. That's the first thing I want to start out to everyone know. The CNP is the party for the defense of the California community. That's what it is. That's the first priority. Independence, of course, comes with that, but independence is not the only thing. We could do something well before full independence from the federal government. And I would like to say that when we are dealing with such a threat from the outside federal government that respects nothing about California values or norms, we have to do everything possible to pull out all the stops to make sure that we can actually stand up to a fascist regime. And they call us Antifa or they call us whatever. Again, I welcome every insult because I know what they stand for, and I want to be the opposite side of history from those people. So just to start off with, I want to let people know the history of the California National Party. If you're new to this, if you don't aware of the background, I want to just give a kind of a brief rundown of the CNP. The CNP is based on the Scottish National Party. Now, you probably have heard of that. There was a big referendum back in 2015. They tried to vote for independence from the UK. It barely lost, but again, they are the party of government of Scotland. They're the Scottish ruling party. They have quite a number of MPs in Parliament to defend their interests, and that is the party we model ourselves after. We don't model ourselves after any other party except for them. The Scottish National Party, again, we took their name, California National Party. And if you take a moment to look at their background, if you decide to go onto Wikipedia for 2 seconds, they're going to say something that, again, the Scottish National Party is a social democratic, civic nationalist, center-left party that advocates independence for Scotland. Now, these words and definitions, I kind of believe are bastardized over the years. So I wouldn't say that this applies to us 100%. The reason being is that what is a social democrat? What is a civic nationalist? What is center-left anymore? All these terms have been distorted. I mean, Bernie Sanders, in my mind, is the center-left. He is advocating for nothing except the restoration of a lot of the Great Society from the 1960s. So he is as liberal as Lyndon Johnson. He's as liberal as FDR. He is not a revolutionary. He's not doing anything radical. He's actually trying to make sure that the United States can actually join the developed world. And I think we want something beyond that. I kind of tell ourselves that we are a post-left party. What that means is that our party is based on humanity and logic. We have principles and we want to achieve things, and we want to actually make sure that California joins the 21st century. Right now, we are in an undeveloped country controlled by, again, a fascist regime that cares for nothing except for stealing anything that's not nailed down. It is a kleptocracy. You're living under it. You have armed ICE gangs. You have officials abusing their power every which way. And so we need to look to the future, not to just join the developed world, but actually put California really, quote unquote, into the 21st century. We're not living in the 21st century right now. It seems like we're living in the 1930s, well before the actual takeover by the Nazis. But the Nazis are in charge, and though they don't have the full power of the Reich, they want to have the Reich. And that is the reality you live in right now. There's nothing funny about that. This is an ugly situation. As much as we can make light of their stupidity and their jokes, them calling anyone left of Mussolini Antifa, again, these are bad people. They're not smart. You know, we have that at least in our favor. They're not smart. But again, they're bad, aggressive people bullying California. They use California as a scapegoat any which way they can. They put troops in. They hurt people here. They steal people from their families. And we need to make sure to actually defend ourselves and actually get the California community away from this nonsense. And just like I said before, our party is based really on the ideas of humanity and logic. Logic will dictate that if you cannot convince these red states, these MAGA cultists, to have any sense of not being cruel, or even to try to improve their own lives, then we should get out. We should have a national divorce. We need to get out of the home. The other person is insane. This is the only logical way to make sure we actually have a better California. So again, I don't want to put any label on us except that we are always going to look to defend the California community in every which way, because right now, what we're under, like I said before, it's the United States of APAC. It is a country that is spending $40 billion to help out Argentina because they have an ideological project in Argentina. They want to make sure that the extreme libertarianism isn't embarrassed. So they're going to bail them out to $40 billion. $40 billion could do so much for the entire country of the United States, now let alone California, which, by the way, too, California spends $83 billion to subsidize red states and the federal government. We don't get that money back. We are the fourth largest economy in the world. We put out enough money to the federal government, and we still don't get $83 billion back. So again, if $40 billion can actually bail out Argentina, and God knows how many billions we've given to the Israelis, what do you think that $83 billion can actually do for Californians? I know people are talking about a wealth tax right now, but I think that the $83 billion we're already pouring away, why don't we reach that back first before we even talk about more taxes? Because what's the point? Because we're going to just tax, when we already have that big pot of money that's being used by apartheid states who are setting up Charlie Kirk statues. You really want to go down that road? I don't want to subsidize them anymore. I want the money back first. Then we can talk about more taxes. So that's what I mean by the California National Party is a party that is humane and logical. We have an actual rational thought process. This is the antithesis of MAGA. So again, I guess it makes us Antifa because we're the antithesis of them. Just to go back to, again, California National Party, based on the Scottish National Party. It was formed in 2015 around the same time as the referendum. Again, 3 individuals, one bright personality who'll come on a little bit later. They formed it because they could already smell the direction of history. California should not have been in the Union back then because of what was happening back then, which was already bad. That was the aftermath of the Iraq War. That was the aftermath of the Bush years. That was the meandering continuation, lukewarm, whatever nature of the Obama years. So again, they already knew that this was already going in a bad direction and want to get out. So again, for those people, especially Theo Slater who come on later, again, minor day secular prophet for actually understanding that process. And I know there's other people in the Zoom call too who knew about this from a long time ago. I would include myself, even though I wasn't part of any kind of organized movement. I remember thinking about California being independent back during the Iraq War. This is, again, the trend of history, and this history will trend into the direction of actual separation, whether we like it or not. Even if you weren't for the idea of California independence, this country is not going to exist in a form you can recognize in 2 to 3 years. Already the White House is a place you can't recognize right now, physically. So that being said, these people put forward the idea, again, based on the CNP, again, also based on other good intellectuals. Irving Welsh, for example, had spoken at our conventions before. Irving Welsh is the author of Train Spotting, just to give you an idea. And he put it best in one of our conversations that he had with the CNP, was that the best foundation of any nation is a nation that is just large enough to have a small government that actually still works. I mean, physically kind of being on the smaller side. I'm not talking about, any kind of programs or welfare programs or anything like that. That's not what I consider a big government. I consider a big government the military industrial complex, ICE, the billions of dollars that go out to these major subsidies of corporations. Irving Welsh said that we need to make sure that we maintain a small country, and again, or smaller as we could possibly do. That's why he was a favorite for it in Scotland. It had nothing to do with Scottish ethnicity or culture or race or anything like that. He just thought the best idea was that Scotland was smaller. It's better to have a democracy in a smaller country. And I would agree too, California is smaller, of course, than the United States, still incredibly large, 40 billion, size of Canada, 4th largest economy. But reducing this idea that we could all work together on such a large stage, especially with bad faith actors, we need to get out of that. So again, we follow with SNP's ideas, we follow with Irving Welsh's idea as well. And that's why we want to create a California community that is together, intact, smaller, and actually focusing on local issues. I drive every day for my work and see the failures of the Democratic Party in the state. So before I would like to dump off everything on Trump and Republicans, and I do believe they are the number one enemy of California, the Democrats are not doing a good job. They're a city hall, they're corrupt. And again, I see the tent encampments, I see the poor housing, I see the people begging constantly, driving down a road that's barely maintained. So again, if you ever have the thought process that, well, the California National Party is this disaffected Democrats, I want to abuse you of that notion right now. I want to make sure that you have no belief that this is just about trying to get the Democrats back into power and to have a permanent Democratic Party in charge of an independent California. We're well beyond that. We want real change. We want a California revolution. So that being said, we did have a person who ran against the Democrats actually back in 2021. That person was Michael Lopes. He was the previous chair of the California National Party. He ran his campaign on a nothing budget. Literally, we did the stats. For every 3 cents he spent in that campaign, or again, his campaign, they spent 3 cents for every voter and got 26,000 votes. So if you can do the reverse math, you understand that we spent nothing on his campaign and he got 26,000 votes with little resources whatsoever and probably 2 or 3 actual interviews. So from that, we should understand that there's a hell of a lot of people already interested in the idea. Even if we have a very limited reach, we have people brought into the party and interested in our politics. So again, I want you to remember that figure. Michael Lopes ran in the recall election in 2021 against Newsom, not so much in support of the recall because the recall was what it was. But again, we want to get our name out there. He got 26,000 votes, people. So that has to be always remembered. He did that. He did that well on a nothing budget and just gained the name out there. So imagine if we have more resources and more people recruited and involved, how much further we could possibly go. Now, I want to explain also further that when we're talking about like these things again, like, you know, how many members we have or how many votes we got in the last election or who ran for office, etc. Well, I'm going to give you the latest statistic. The latest statistic right now, and this comes from Newsweek. This was printed on July 1st. California independence support hits a record high. A new poll has found 44% of California adults would vote for the state to leave the United States and become a fully independent nation tomorrow. Now, this poll was not done by Newsweek. It was done by 2 organizations. One is the one that proposed the poll questions and put it forward and paid for it. And that is the Independent California Institute. And I want you to remember that name, ICI. ICI is the ones who put forward that poll. They worked with YouGov. YouGov, again, you have heard that polling service all over every time there's an election or any kind of proposition. They did the poll. They found in July 1st, before a lot of the occupations, before more ICE horror stories, before a lot actually went down, because remember, we're living on this weird accelerated time right now, right? It feels like we've lived 5 years, and really it's only been about 10 months and change. Again, back in July 1st, we were already 44% people supporting us. So let's just remember that. I think now it probably is at even 50 and it could go further. So again, we have momentum, we have the force of history, we have the personalities who are going to make this happen. And again, no matter what, California, the United States are not going to be in the same form as you know it pretty soon. But that is something where we can't just sit on the sidelines and go, you know what, this is really, it's just going to happen. So why do anything? Why try ourselves? Why do anything else, right? Why? You know, you could just sit home and the whole thing might just collapse anyway. But again, that is the point. But really, the point always starts with, and this is what we always said, it's about protecting the California community. That is the point, is to improve the lives of Californians as fast as we can and with as much, you know, power we could actually pull into the equation to make things actually happen and not just be like Democrats who have a great rhetoric, but no history of action whatsoever. So when we are talking about the issues of need, you know, housing, healthcare, roads, environment, ice skates, the Republican Party, all these things, a lot of this can be actually tackled right now, even before independence. Again, we know there's no possibility of reform in the federal government. The Supreme Court is a lock. Again, you have an administration that believes that blue states are considered the enemy. Half of the political class is saying that the other half are the worst traitors in history. There's not going to be any compromises anytime soon. I'm afraid to report to you that this is a cold civil war right now. You're in the middle of it. It's not fully hot, but again, remember, government armed gangs have attacked people, violated their rights, eliminated due process, shipped people to other countries. That's happening right now. And again, California, none of the Californians in the majority wanted any of this to happen. And Newsom is trying to do his thing, but again, what is the problem with the Democrats? It's a lot of rhetoric and no action. Again, he'll go on Twitter in 2 seconds and bash Trump, and we'll all do a clap, and we'll say that was a great one. But guess what? Has he arrested ICE agents? They're violating the law. They still have masks. We have the no mask law here in California. He's not pushing that. He's not bringing civil rights charges to the civil rights that they're violating. There is no coordination with law enforcement to track their activities. Again, this is always a problem. They're saying the right things. They don't do anything. The California National Party, if we had a person in the governor's office, would be the party to actually do something, to make something actually happen right now. And again, California, I'm not going to paint it as a utopia or anything like that. We don't have a proper system in California. I mean, really, it is a city hall system. It's a one-party state. The reason why they just do rhetoric and no action is because there's nothing to challenge them. I mean, what are you going to do? Vote for the brown shirt? And that's never going to happen, right? So this means this saying that, we're going to have a situation where we can, kind of wait it out, hope for the best, and just have a governor who really gives some stingers in his tweets, that this is not how we should be continuing our lives. We need to have a person in the governor's office to make some change. We need to grow the party to actually put forward this message because, again, remember, Michael Loeb's 3 interviews, 3 cents a voter was basically how it broke down with the budget. We got 26,000 votes. We got 100 votes in a county that is so small that, again, that was 10% of the population. We don't even know how that happened. That all being said, if we get our message out there, people are ready to receive it because people are not stupid. They're sick of this, and they can see through a lot of things. They can see through a Newsom, and they definitely know what the threat of a Trump is. So someone running for governor and a California National Party, if that was put into power, what we would do right off the bat is to make sure that we get the $83 billion back. $83 billion can do so much for us. When it comes to healthcare, roads, infrastructure, whatever, we have the ability to solve so many problems, and literally we're being bled to death to support people who don't like California. If you've gone into any social media board, message board about California, and it comes from a right-wing perspective, we're always the 7th circle of hell. We have the worst people, stupidest government, worst taxes, people are fleeing, the mass hysteria, dogs and cats, living, whatever. Again, any kind of hyperbole they want to, talk about. The end of the world apparently is coming from California. They do despise us. So if they despise us so much and they think that they're so smart about economics, because obviously they have larger economies than the 4th largest economy in the world, let's let them do their experiment. Let's bring back the $83 billion. Let's spend it on ourselves. We'll figure it out, or we'll, again, just toss away the money because we're just stupid like that. Whatever happens, but at least it's our money. We should be able to do something with that. So that is one of our first things. Anyone who wants to run for office and is not talking about bringing back the $83 billion from the red states, forget it. They're not a serious contender. And by the way, Newsom did talk about taking the $83 billion back, but he has not done anything about that. And that's the usual kind of equation, right? There's rhetoric, good rhetoric, funny rhetoric, not much action. And if we're going to be in the situation to make sure that life is better for Californians, and we have the $83 billion, well, again, that's a lot of money. What are we going to do with this? And then also, not everything is just about money, but also, again, defense, of our community, how we make things better, how we actually make sure that we have a system that works better for us. And even before we actually go to the final question of actually breaking away from the United States, which has to happen. I mean, again, a lot of people are hesitant on that matter. They can see a lot of our platform and go, these are great ideas. These are things that could fix California right off the bat. But that all being said, it's just I can't see independence. It's going to be too weird. We can't have it happen, blah, blah, blah. Well, you again, and this should not be news for anyone in this room. These are Republicans who are breaking down all norms. They're Republicans that are ready to go to war with Venezuela. They are murdering fishermen on the high seas. They don't have proof of what they're doing. Even if they did have proof, I don't remember summary execution being the go-to for dealing with drug dealers. We've never had that before in this country. The only country that ever did that before, their president is now in The Hague. So we don't do that. Again, they don't care about due process. They're ready to spend money to Argentina to prop their ideological experiment up. They're ready to get their beef into our country, which screws the cattle ranchers. And it's questionable if it's going to drop down prices for consumers. And then also, too, I don't know if I want to eat beef from Argentina when they have a whack job wannabe Musk in charge of things. We have no idea what those regulations are. We have no idea the quality or the healthiness of that meat. And again, that's your government right now. That's your three branches. One branch, remember, is permanent and eternal, the Supreme Court. So that Supreme Legislature is always going to be there to ready to stab any reform movement down. Again, talking about all this money being wasted either to red states or to prop up Argentina or to help kill kids in Palestine or whatever. Again, we are just in a broken constitutional system. We are in something where there is no set boundaries anymore in a lot of ways, and the boundaries are dropping. And, even, again, the tariffs themselves, this doesn't really get talked about. Tariffs are stupid economically. We all get that. It drives up costs. It's a tax on the consumer. But how did he have the ability to do these things? Well, he had the International Emergency Economic Powers Act that was put in 1962 that allowed the president to do tariffs on his own. Well, guess where that came from? Sorry, to break the slight bubble here, but that was John F. Kennedy, and that was Democrats who put that in. They already tore a part of the Constitution off and gave it to the president. Same thing happened in 1974. Trade Act of 1974. That was good old Richard Nixon as the president, Mr. Republican, and a Democratic Congress signed off on that. So again, these two parties are ready to keep pulling away constitutional measures, basic ones like, hey, we should have due process, and hey, Congress is actually the one to, make sure we have a war or not. And hey, Congress actually controls the money supply. They've all kind of chipped away at that. And I think that while the California National Party is probably the most radical party in the sense that we want to have secession from the federal government, it is also the most middle of the road party by saying, hey, due process is kind of a good thing. Hey, taxation without representation. We founded the whole country based on not wanting that. So that's, again, the CNP stance. That is, again, something that we have to stand up to. And again, a California governor has to be pushing forward against that system and has to be talking about independence from all this nonsense. But again, there's a here to there when it comes to the situation. And that there is going to be further down the line no matter what. But in the now, again, the day 1, 0 hour kind of stuff when it comes to what a governor can actually do, there's a few items. And again, this is the stuff that I would put in as governor. This is based on our, consultation with CNP members over the years. This is not my original thinking or anything like that. This is based on, again, the California National Party's community online and in-person talks about what we should actually do if we got a modicum of power. And one of the things that I would do is that, again, if we are in a state of emergency with armed ICE gangs, right? We do have, again, a government going after us with, physical law enforcement. So what we need to do is create a Cal Defense. It's a unified emergency command. What that basically means is that, at first, what that will be is that, okay, we're going to combine the State Guard, which is not the National Guard. Again, I always want to emphasize this. There's a California State Guard. You can look it up. It's a whopping 900 unpaid volunteers. The interesting thing, though, is that as the State Guard, they cannot be taking orders from Donald Trump. Their commander-in-chief will always be the governor. We have the State Guard expanded to put in, again, the idea that we have actually a service that can help out with the wildfires, help coordinate, any kind of measures when, again, there's any kind of natural disaster or whatever. basically what the National Guard is supposed to do. But again, they don't take orders from Trump, and they're not going to be used against protesters because they're actually doing what they're supposed to be doing. We create Cal Defense, we expand that guard, and that guard, at the same time as they're doing what the National Guard should be doing without Trump interference, that state guard can actually monitor ICE activities, can actually have an app saying, listen, ICE is in the neighborhood. These are the cars. We have our uniformed people who are authorized by the state government watching their activities, monitoring them, and also making sure they will face accountability in the future. The Illinois governor already has a commission about accountability. And again, I'm not going to give so many, points to the Democrats, but he's a pretty good one. Our governor hasn't thought about that. He's kind of busy at the moment. Again, whatever he's doing, totally not connected with him running for 2028. But anyway, we have a state guard. They go out, they monitor ICE activities. And again, the governor should call a state of emergency to say again that we have law enforcement from the federal level out of control, and we should enforce the mask law, and we should enforce civil rights violations. There is civil rights laws on the books that are particular to California. They're not being utilized. They're not actually being emphasized. That is ready to go for any California Attorney General, Deputy Attorney General, any prosecutor. They can utilize that against ICE. But it hasn't happened because we don't really have leadership. We just have, someone who loves Twitter and really is thinking about that end goal in 2028, even though he has said in 2028, it's not really sure we're going to have a fair election. And that in 2028, Trump has given him, Trump in 2028 hats left and right as a joke on him. But again, he wants to make sure he wants to run for president. He doesn't want to actually have to do what he's doing right now, which he's obligated to do until, again, 2026. So that being said, as a governor candidate, and again, with the California National Party, that would be our first priority one. That's a day 1, 0 hour thing. Now, later on, there's other ideas we want to be doing too, especially if we got the $83 billion back. We want to make sure that we have established a California permanent fund. What that means is a universal basic income. It's based on the Alaskan model. You take all the money from the minerals and then also the money from AI replacing jobs left and right. You make that a dividend and you pay that out to the people, because there's a lot of people in areas that are suffering. Either they're living paycheck to paycheck, or again, they're way below the poverty line. This will be automatically a help. Same time too, if you're doing a little bit okay, but you have that basic income, guess what? Maybe you save it for a little bit. And we have more growth. So there's a lot you can actually do with that. The next thing too is that I would start, we will start a National Endowment of the Arts for the California Republic. The California Republic would be, again, California Republic would basically, our National Endowment for the Arts for the California Republic would be a way of setting up a basic income for artists. Ireland already passed that. For every €1 that's actually put out there, they get 1.48 euros back. So it's a good investment, and it'd be an investment in graphic artists, independent people who are trying to do art. And again, the state of California would be the senior partner for these people. And again, we would get a cut of the money, they would get a living, everyone's happier, and it's growth of our economy based on one of the pillars of the economy, which is Hollywood, right? So we do that. That will be one of the better things to make sure that we actually have a growing cultural life and economic life. The next thing I would do is to make sure that we would actually convene a California State Constitutional Convention, set up local grand juries in every one of the counties that are based on the demographics of those counties. So again, everyone has an equal say, put them together in an assembly, write up a new state constitution, because the state constitution right now was written in the 1800s when their biggest concern was going after Chinese workers. So now we can have a better constitution for the state. And what that means is that we would have housing is a human right. Healthcare is a human right. We would also make sure that states within the state actually have the right to do certain things, not to become a California, Alabama, for example, but set up their own tax rate, set up their own gun laws, set up their own, again, ability for environmental regulations, because environmental regulations might be very strong and very different in San Francisco, might be a little bit different in Inyo County, but again, there would be nothing actually different in any way, where there's like something where we have this, terrible falling out where, like, again, some place comes a wasteland and some place becomes pristine. But there's certain things where the locality will actually understand the impact of new regulations, right? So if we have that come across and they actually can rule on certain things differently, that is going to be a big help for everyone, because our principles come forward that, again, democracy is important, and local democracy is actually the one that would actually make sure that people can actually have a voice on, again, their level, and they actually understand the issues. Sacramento tries to do a one size fit all, right? Again, they got 80 assemblymen or whatever in the legislature. Again, their legislature is smaller than Iowa's. That being the case, again, it's not very democratic, low D democratic. Same thing with like the county supervisors in Los Angeles. There's 5 supervisors to represent 16 million people. So again, not very democratic. You need tons of money to even run, recognition, whatever. It's only a few spaces. We need to expand our democracy in every level. And that also means too, expanding to have proportional representation so that we have third parties like ourselves actually get a voice in government. Base it on the German system. I know it's kind of funny to say, but again, the Germans have a good system of proportional representation, coalition governments, where smaller parties actually have a say and actually have some buy-in that the bigger parties, you know, the Social Democrats or the Christian Democrats actually have. So what I was going to say too is that if we have these coalitions, we actually have that kind of system in place, it will break the power of the Democrats. They will make sure, again, we actually do have a one party that's actually taken away, right? So again, we break their power. That is the best thing we can actually do. And that's the thing with our Constitutional Convention. And I will push that forward because I don't believe that, again, you know, we call ourselves a nation state. It's 40 million people. Again, it's the 4th largest economy in the world. Why are we running it like it's, you know, less than Iowa? We have to run like Canada. Canada has provinces that has localities with control. They don't let them go through the floor, but again, the local government has a lot of power and say. That is more democratic. Again, they're the same size as us, 40 million, but of course, they're a much larger community as it is. Or excuse me, we are a much larger economy than they are. So we should be able to have something to be said to make sure that we operate like an actual nation state even before full independence. And we could do that with a state constitution. The next thing would be, we would, one last point, and it seems like it'd be an easy minor one, but actually would have major implications. We make sure that the Pacific Stock Exchange is reopened. You might not even know that existed. It existed from 1956 to 2006. It was the Wall Street on the Pacific. Now, if we're going to have a better economic system, we need to have a Wall Street set up here that is independent of the old Wall Street, because right now, the biggest problem with a lot of the economy is that we're living in a post-legal time where people make up new rules and regulations based on what Trump says, what anyone else says, right? So that being the case, we want to have a safe haven for a lot of businesses because, again, this is kind of economics 101. If they have a safe harbor, if they have a place with the rule of law and order, they will make sure that they actually invest there because it's not crazy town stuff. They're not listening to someone going on Twitter going, well, here's a new tariff. Now the tariff's gone again. And I'm going to make up some new rule. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. So again, we need to have a drawing away from Wall Street, make that actually independent. So again, I've talked about these points, what we want to put forward, but again, what is our strategy for the campaign, for example, right? Like, how are we actually going to do this? How are we going to start off here? Well, one, we need to make sure that we sign up people for the party. Again, either paid memberships, which basically means you're a donor to our party, you're helping us keep alive. We can actually run campaigns. And then the other thing too is voter registration. Right now, our party is in a limbo. We are a qualified, unqualified party. It basically means that the party is qualified in the sense of, you know, we have to do the rules, we have to do the compliance, we have to go to Fair Practices, Political Practices Commission in California. We have to every 6 months send our expenditures and reports. We have to do all that stuff, right? So that being said, again, like, you know, we are qualified. We have to have the bank accounts ready. We have to have our ducks in a row. So we're qualified. We're recognized by them. However, we're not qualified in the sense that if we have someone, like, again, this would happen to Michael Lopes when he ran for governor, On the ballot line, it says Democrat, Republican, Independent, American, Green, Libertarian, whatever. We don't have the ability to basically try to have our name on the ballot, right? We can't have our name on the ballot. The ballot, again, will not be given to us unless we reach a threshold of about 80-some thousand voter registers or voter registrations, right? So we need to build a campaign to be qualified so that anyone running in local office, people see, oh, that's a CNP person. That's a CNP person. That helps us advertise. That helps us get recognition. And also in the eyes of certain people, legitimacy, right? Legitimacy, like, again, so-called peace and freedom or Greens, like they seem legitimate because you see their name next to a ballot or someone who's running for office, right? That needs to actually be the case where we can actually be a real party. So again, we have to first do that, grow the party, get membership, get voters registered. And then, okay, so we have chapters out there. We need leaders of chapters. Again, we have chapters throughout the state. The most active ones are kind of like, usual suspects territory, San Francisco, Los Angeles. We also have Mountain Mojave, which is Get Inyo, Hesperia, San Diego chapter. People are doing good work right there right now. We need to have more chapter leaders. We need to make sure that these people are actually taken in and actually, can focus on registering people, gaining memberships, and then also, preparing for future action, which is, again, a governor's race, trying to get the message out there. So that's how we actually grow the party and actually focus on all these things. And that is the first part of the strategy as a general strategy, but then also I plan to campaign in an unusual way. Besides, again, social media, which again, everyone talks about, actually has to be put forward, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That all being said, again, copying the Zoran campaign, remember Zoran started with 0%, didn't have a lot of money. Yeah, I mean, again, he came from kind of a well-off background, and yes, he did win assemblyman, but he pulled at 0%, but he made an impact with social media. Now, obviously, I need to do that. I am not really that cognizant with that. I'm not really on top of that with that kind of stuff. But that all being said, besides that campaign, which we need to, get into and involve ourselves with, we need to actually have something unusual. And I think that me campaigning in Inyo County, Lone Pine on a 395 will be of help because, one, they're a purple county. They're not red. People think that. They voted for Biden in 2020. They voted for Trump by 30 votes in 2024. It is a place full of political agnostics. It is a small population, but on the map, it's huge. It's bigger than New England. If I go out there and start the process of campaigning when they have their own media ecosystem, on the Eastern Sierras, I get out there with the local media. I shake hands. I talk to locals. I see their issues because, again, locals' issues go from the environment to cattle ranchers to land use to abuse of the Department of Water and Power from Los Angeles, which is a whole Chinatown backstory. Again, it hits all the issues we want to talk about, plus also the need for more local control, the need for more localization, right? So that all being said, that will start my campaign there with the hope that their local media, which is independent and unique, filters into California. But again, I need all the help in the world. Again, when it comes to social media, we need more money. We need more help to actually get this out here. So anyone who has any kind of skill set or anything like that, please sign up, register to vote if you haven't done so, register to be a paid member, and then contact the secretary at californiarevolution.info. Put in, again, I want to be a chapter leader. We have locations. If we don't have a location with a setup chapter, we'll make up a new one. But we need to have all these people on board to make sure that we have this growing team of individuals. And again, the CNP, I've been in other political parties before, like the Green Party, for example. CNP, the one thing I can say is that it is the most interesting, active group of people possible. They are the ones that are full of ideas, unique ideas. Things are so different from anything else. And I believe that we have the possibility with our grouping to really make some change. Now, people will look around and go like, oh, the Zoom call is kind of small. I don't see so many people knowing about CNP, the CNP new even, et cetera, et cetera. Well, it is not new. It started in 2015. It is on the smaller side. But again, there's a lot of support. Remember that Newsweek, 44% of people in California, July 1st, said they would sign on the dotted line to leave the United States. That is not insignificant. If you thought about that in the evil direction, if you thought about that like, oh my God, 44% of Texas voted for the Nazi party. You would think that's an impact, right? You think that there's something to pay attention to. Now, again, we're on the opposite moral level completely. But that being said, you would be waking up. You shouldn't just say, well, 44%, that's, that's still minority. No, that's not really insignificant minority. That is something that can be built into machine. And again, it starts with, again, small groupings. I would say that, this one of these stories, again, I'm a person of history. One of the things that I love, they always talk about is like these little moments and little character situations of history. And I want to share a story. If you don't know, the Cafe Central in Vienna, Austria in 1913 had the craziest clientele in human history. People hanging around there were Sigmund Freud, Leon Trotsky, Joseph Stalin, Adolf Hitler, Marshal Tito. All these people went to the same cafe, obviously quite different politics. But again, there's these characters in the background that people weren't really paying attention to. If you're in 1913 in Vienna, you would not think twice about any of these people, except maybe the weirdo with the mustache, right? That's about it. That all these personalities were in one room. And that all being said, these personalities, for good or for evil, took off and they started small. And again, there's a story. The foreign minister of Austria-Hungary, right before the war, he was in Vienna. And, they was talking to one of his advisors, and they said, if you start a war with Russia, it could cause a revolution in Russia. And then, we don't know how that's going to splash back on us. There could be a revolution in Austria-Hungary. They could overturn the entire system. And this foreign minister turned and said, really, you think that that's going to be the case? Who's going to lead this revolution? Who's going to actually change Russia? Is it Mr. Bronstein over there? Mr. Bronstein's Leon Trotsky. He was sitting right there at the time. He pointed to Trotsky and laughed. So again, small meetings can have dramatic effects. Again, and also it's in our history too, our common history now, which will divert. But again, in American history, it was the founding fathers, or again, before really the founding fathers, the Sons of Liberty talking angrily in a tavern in Boston, and then everything kicked off. So again, if you think it's small, well, think big. So again, appreciate it, guys. Thank you so much for your time. Right now, we're going to take about a 2-minute break, and then we're going to turn to our friend Loren Colin, who is going to be speaking about his campaign. I will turn it over to Loren Colin. Loren, you can join us now. Loren, again, just to give a brief introduction, he is running for the 34th district against Jimmy Gomez. So I just want to make sure that's the case. Again, Loren is a complete independent. He is someone who is not part of any major party or minor party. He's doing his own thing. He's getting out there to make the case. We agree on so many issues that, again, at the end of the convention, I'll put into a brief vote endorsement for his campaign for Congress. So with that all being said, Loren, you have the floor. Take your time. Once Loren's done with his speech, too, he's going to open up to anyone who has questions about his Congress run, feelings of California, feelings on the 34th, whatever. And again, we'll just see how that plays out.
Thank you, Sean, and a pleasure to meet all of you. I've had the pleasure of also speaking before to Bill and Ash, and I'm really excited about the message of the California National Party, which ultimately is California is the leader and the powerhouse of this nation, and it doesn't feel like it, and it needs to be. In fact, we actually need to make the United States more like California in order for the United States to continue to be successful. So again, my name is Loren Colin, and I am running as an independent for Congress to represent California 34 in Los Angeles, which, if you're familiar with our geography here, it basically stretches from Eagle Rock, Highland Park, Boyle Heights, all of unincorporated East Los Angeles, our downtown core, including the Arts District, Chinatown, Little Tokyo, MacArthur Park, and Westlake, all of Koreatown, and all of Pico Union. And I'm in this little sliver of Echo Park that is just inside 34. I am running as an independent because I have been one my whole life. It was during Bill Clinton's presidency that I recognized that I, as a liberal, would never actually be represented by the Democratic Party as we watch the Democratic Party sell out the people and become Republican light and do things like get rid of Glass-Steagall and do things like welfare reform instead of expanding the welfare state. When the First Lady got any sort of pushback against tax-funded public health care, the Democrats ran away. And I think that's really the ding against the Democrats is whenever they've actually had power, they've never used it. And that's what we're here about. This is not for fun and games. This is for the power and hopefully the power of the people and returning that power back to us. There is a theory of running as an independent here in 2026. I am not the only one across the country. If we elect enough independents to Congress to deny both parties a majority, and this is actually true of every legislative body at every level of government, by electing enough independents to deny both parties a majority, we get our government back. So it's not some wistful idea of, a small party achieving a majority and taking over, or even some progressive wonderland of all of a sudden a mass of progressives, but it is by actually electing independents who do not owe an oath to a party, but who only owe an oath to the people who elected them and have no other special interests in mind. Because let's be real, a party is your number one special interest when you are elected. And so we can actually fundamentally change the system. And people want change. They want fundamental change. But they don't want just change for the sake of change. That systemic change actually has to make their lives materially better, where they once again feel like they have opportunity, where they feel like they can get ahead in life, make a little bit of money, put money away for savings, be entrepreneurial and start businesses if they'd like. Know that they won't go bankrupt if they get sick because they have health insurance and not health care. And they want, hope and opportunity for their kids. And right now, that's just not a conversation that's happening in America at the federal level. And it's barely happening in our own state here at the state and local levels. In fact, often it feels like all of our electeds are working against the people. And I think it's because they're ultimately working for people in systems that are not the people. As congressman, I have some things that are super important to me. Number one, in order to fix the system at the national level, we have to have a system of fair taxation. And fair taxation is actually quite simple to achieve with a little bit of imagination. And it's time. So why am I doing this? Partly I'm doing this because I've been angry since I was 16 years old that I have been paying a large percentage of my wealth that I earn in wages as taxes versus the uber wealthy, of which over half are uber wealthy because they inherited it. And the other half are wealthy because, yes, they put in some work, but they also got very lucky. And also because they're not paying taxes at the same percentage on every dollar that they earn that you and I who earn wages earn. And that's how we get to a fair tax system. It is basically getting rid of every single tax expenditure in the tax code for individuals and for companies. No more tax shelters, no more exemptions, no more subsidies, no more tax shelters. Treat every dollar of wealth the same, whether it comes from capital gains or inheritance or royalties or tricks like carried interest, right? Or even bigger tricks like borrowing against your stock forever and ever as collateral. Treat all of that the same and tax it the same. And the first 100,000, maybe even 150,000 at the federal level, this is not an exemption. You just tax it at 0%. And then you could actually have one tax rate. Maybe it's 30%. Maybe it's 50%. Whatever it takes ultimately to get close to a balanced budget is what that next tax rate is. And then you actually have a fair and progressive tax system. It also ends the wealth hoarding. And let's be honest, it's not so much the money in politics that has destroyed our national politics, and in many ways, our state and local politics too. It is the wealth hoarding that allows money to become power. And within 5 years, if we had this tax, because everyone's going to die, So if we start taxing inheritance, like all other income, that money will come back to the people where it belongs in a fair and honest and actually pretty quick manner. The other pillar to returning our government to the people is something that has been called lots and lots of dirty names. But the truth is that tax-funded public healthcare is a competitive advantage for all Americans, for all American businesses. And right now it keeps us poor and destitute and clinging to a system that treats us bad. Look, government has a role. This is ultimate truth. Government has a role in making fair and competitive markets. And where competitive markets don't exist, like healthcare, because the profit motive is always negative to the social motive, government has a role to step in and create the market. And while sometimes American exceptionalism can be great, there's also times where we just need to copy what works. The truth of the matter is, in the United States of America, we pay more for public health, for VA healthcare, and for Medicare and Medicaid than all other countries in whatever form of their public healthcare is. Germany and Japan basically have the German Bismarck system, where everyone who works pays into the system. It's about 8% of their wages, and it covers everyone from cradle to grave. It covers dental. It covers mental. It covers long-term health care. It covers prescriptions for 1/3 less per person than we pay for health insurance. They get health care. We get health insurance. And part of the problem of the parties, including the Democratic Party, is while they have a slogan, Medicare for all, they don't explain the simple truth that tax-funded public healthcare is better and cheaper and more secure and will actually make you healthier and wealthier than our private insurance that we have now. And they can't make that argument because they are tied to and also owe their power to the same health insurance companies and the same prescription drug companies. And it is time that we break that power and put that power back into the hands of the people. And it's so crazy. I mean, when I talk to people in East Los Angeles and Boyle Heights and Koreatown, it's one of their top two issues, along with homelessness, and I'll get there. But when they talk about healthcare, they tell me, they're like, Loren, I get it. I would rather tax 8% of my income because that will be cheaper than my premium, my deductible, my copay, and my coinsurance, and it will always be there. The people know this, but we don't have leadership who will step up and say what the people already know, and I'm here to say that. Next, and this is very important to all of California, and to California 34 and Los Angeles in particular, is housing. And it is time to build all sorts of housing everywhere throughout California in order for us to maintain our leadership in this country and in the world as a world leader and continue to be the fourth largest economy. We simply need more housing everywhere. And I have a plan for that. And it's threefold. Number one is right now there is no government guarantee for multifamily homes, all the missing middle homes, which includes townhomes and duplexes, triplexes, garden apartments, bungalow apartments. I'm not sure about all the rest of the state, but it's the things here that really make Los Angeles famous architecturally. We can't build anymore. And we've actually destroyed the small and medium-sized developers and construction companies that would build all of this type of housing. So I will be proposing a federal loan guarantee for the construction and financing of that missing middle housing. And it'll still go through our private banks, and they can make it on the loan origination and maintenance fees of the loan. But ultimately, we will make it easy to build everywhere in California with a federal loan guarantee. And the truth is, the housing crisis is everywhere. Additionally, after 2008, after the mortgage crisis, I don't want to call it a housing crisis, it was a mortgage crisis. The federal government and the bank regulators made it way too hard to get a loan. You basically need a perfect credit score to get a loan in 2025. And it's just not only not fair, it completely distorts the housing market. We should not go back to ninja loans. That was insane. That was the greed of the financial sector that led to its own collapse that we ended up bailing out. We bailed out Wall Street, not Main Street. And that was another original sin. But we can't fix that sin 17 years ago, but we can make things right going forward. People who have 660 and 670 credit scores, which are technically good, who pay $3,500 or $4,000 a year or a month in rent, can't get a mortgage. And it's ridiculous because if you get a mortgage that's the same or less than, including the mortgage and insurance and property tax, then they're paying in rent, but because they don't have a perfect score, they can't get it. So while Congress cannot force the bank regulators and banks to ease up, we can use our bully pulpit to explain to banks and the regulators why it is time to make it slightly easier to get a bank loan or a mortgage loan. And the third thing is in California, and while the state has done a great job of making it easier to build, and SB 79 is a big deal, and AB 130 and 131 that went in, the CEQA reforms are all big deals. They're just the start. They are not nearly enough. And I will be proposing a federal block grant program for 10 years. You can go anywhere, but really it's for all of the metro areas in the country, especially areas like Los Angeles, San Diego, San Jose, Long Beach, San Francisco, Sacramento, that in order to get this block grant, it will be used to for cities and localities and counties to improve their permitting departments, to hire more people, to modernize their departments in exchange for getting rid of exclusive single-family home zones anywhere. While SB 79 is great, there is no math, and this is done by the City of Los Angeles' planning department. This has been shown by UCLA. This has been shown by RAND. There is no math to solve our housing crisis until we upzone every single-family home zone area in the state to multifamily home zones. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to Manhattanize California or Los Angeles. That doesn't mean that if you have a single family home, you have to tear it down and build a multifamily home. It just means there will be enough stock and natural turnover to allow us to solve our crisis over a period of time. And when we solve our housing crisis, it has the most incredible knock-on effects. It'll be the state's largest private job program. Just in the city of Los Angeles alone, we need 450,000 units of housing in the next 5 years. It will solve our crisis of local monies and raise local tax revenues without even touching Prop 13, which is a whole nother discussion. But you can imagine there are people who bought homes 30 years ago that are paying $1,500 a year in property tax. And if those homes converted to multifamily homes and you built 6 homes on them, you could quadruple or even more the amount of property tax that same set of or the same square feet of property is producing for your local county and for your local city. It will allow us to build more infrastructure, right? And it'll be a huge dent in solving our homelessness crisis. I do believe that we have to change our culture before we change our politics, and that we need to get back to an actual culture of dignity. And it's not treating other people special. It's a matter of treating us all with dignity and respect, and making sure that everyone has the right to exist as they are. I think one of the things that really attracts me about the California National Party is the idea of reform everywhere, and really making reform starting with voting and connecting. And so I have ideas at the federal level, which is to increase the size of the House to 1,305 people. I can tell you, running for a district of 740,000 people, there's no way a representative represents all 740,000 people. But if we triple the size of the House, it'll actually go down to 250,000 people per residents per representative, which is what it was in 1929 when the House got fixed at the current seats of 435. We also just aren't well represented. There are 5 states that have fewer than 740,000 people that have 1 full representative. California would get automatically, if we just had the same amount, the same proportional representation as Wyoming, right, which would increase to like 513 House seats, we would get 10 more representatives in Congress. While I am for Prop 50, and I encourage everyone here to vote for Prop 50, ultimately I am against gerrymandering of all types, and we should make gerrymandering illegal everywhere. The rest of the country should follow California in open, nonpartisan primaries, and which is what it's allowing me to run as an independent. And we should align state primaries nationally to the same date everywhere. Ultimately, it'd be great to weaken the power of the Senate. Certainly, it is time to get rid of the filibuster, and it is time to get more democratic and elect the president directly and get rid of the Electoral College. Similarly, in California, what I think is really great about the CNP platform is increasing the size of the state legislature and the state assembly. And here in Los Angeles, I think it is paramount that we increase the size of our city council to 45. Demographics is destiny. And I heard Sean say this earlier, right? California needs to be in charge of its own immigration if the federal government isn't going to do it. But ultimately, whether it's the federal government or a state government in California, we need to document all of our undocumented immigrants immediately. We need to make it so that migrant workers could easily have a pathway to migrate back and forth to do the work while they are also protected and earning a livable wage. And we just need more immigration and an easier path to citizenship. We need a livable wage at the federal level. And that livable wage is probably this day and age, $25 an hour, separate from a UBI, and I support a UBI, and separate from healthcare, right? So you make your $25 an hour, you pay your 8% against that for your healthcare, and we're all getting a UBI. And universal truly means universal. Ultimately, I think what's so exciting about where people are headed and where CNP is headed is the idea that we know that 1 out of every 8 Americans is a Californian. It's just a little less. It's about 12% of the population of America is right here in the United States, in California. But we don't feel it. It's not the national conversation. And it is time to make that the national conversation. It is time to step up. And this is, again, one of my problems for both parties, whether it's the 40 Democratic representatives or the 12 Republican representatives. They are doing the bidding of the national parties. They are not representing California. I am going to go to our national legislature to represent all the people of California 34 and all the people of California. Those are my only constituents, nobody else. And that's the type of mind shift that we need everywhere here in California. We also seem to have forgotten that there's a 9th Amendment and a 10th Amendment and what federalism really means. And I'm not sure what soft secession is, but I do know that the 9th Amendment and 10th Amendment have been completely abused. And this is not about states' rights, and that comes with a bunch of baggage. This is about federalism and why we have a federal republic. And it is time that we return to actual federalism. It means no unitary executive. It means no plenary power. The fact that that's even said just shows the precipice of fascism that we are tipping into and why parties like CNP are so important to protect the 40 million Californians. Ultimately, I will not, so we talked about the $83 billion that California does not get back. I will not vote yes on a federal budget that does not return $1 for $1. Whatever California sent to the federal government, we need to get a full dollar back. And I will not vote on a federal budget, yes, that does not do that. Mississippi can fend for itself. They can send their dollar and get their dollar instead of their $1.20 back. And if they need to raise taxes and stop living off of Californians, good for them. That's what federalism is actually all about. And finally, I'll leave you with this. What's most beautiful about, I think, the genesis of CNP from my conversations with Sean and his run for governor and with Ash and with Bill is that we are Americans. We want this American experiment to continue. We want the ideals of America, of life and liberty and happiness to finally actually apply to every single American, no matter how many generations your family has been here, no matter your background, no matter the color of your skin, no matter who you love. We all deserve a place in this society, but really merging that with the California dream. And that California dream, as I understand it, has always been one about opportunity, that we recognize hope, that we know as Californians, diversity is absolutely our strength. California is, by and large, the freest state in the nation, by and large. It just doesn't compare. You can not only do what you want, but you can be who you are. And it is time we export that as a government back to the rest of the United States. And that is why I'm running for Congress. You can read more about this at lorencolinforcongress.com, LORENCOLIN for congress.com. And I'm excited to be here. And I am excited that Sean is putting me in for an endorsement. I'll wait for your vote, but I will happily and gladly accept it and look forward to continuing to work with CNP. And I look forward to answering any questions.
Thank you so much, Loren. And yeah, we'll open up the floor. Anyone who has a question, again, just use the kind of the raise hand kind of a reaction. It's kind of see, or again, like, put something in chat if you can't. But yeah, again, we'll open it up. Looks like Shankar is just going to go right out of the gate. So Shankar, why don't you take over?
Hello, Loren. How you doing, sir?
Hello, I'm well, thank you.
I had this is your first campaign, correct?
Technically, I won my seat to the Silver Lake Neighborhood Council in 2006 with 47 votes. But yes, this is my first campaign of this scale.
Who's the incumbent?
Jimmy Gomez.
How long has he been there? Is he Democrat?
He is a Democrat. He won his special election in 2017. He is an amazing backbencher. He takes his orders directly from Nancy Pelosi and Hakeem Jeffries. And if you are a true blue Democrat and you want that backbencher blue vote guaranteed, he's your guy.
Do you know what is a... Oh, go ahead.
If you want leadership and vision and someone with policy ideas and someone to put California 34 first, then you need someone else. Here's just an example, two quick examples of his lack of leadership. In June, when the raid started here, California 34 includes downtown and the Federal Detention Center. And that is where it's in this district. And when it might have been the end of June or beginning of July when Newsom came down and he spoke with all the locals and all the state electeds and all the federal electeds, everybody was in the front. Jimmy Gomez was in the third row hiding in the back in his own district. Jimmy Gomez's last big policy idea was when Harris, when she was running for president, said that we should have the $25,000 tax credit for first-time homebuyers. The median home in Boyle Heights today is still $800,000.
Yeah.
A person qualifying for a home in Boyle Heights would not get that tax credit.
Sure.
His big policy goal would not have affected one person in his district.
If there was, say, a 25% decrease in the price of the median price of a home in California, or just say there was enough production, there was enough inventory of homes, great. Now we all have homes, maybe we can even afford it. But there's also going to be an influx, a massive influx of people from out of state coming here, out of the country, coming here to buy a house, not because the price went down. So what can we do about that? I would suggest maybe proposing a tax for people that are not residents here for more than 5 years, that they get a 25% tax if you're going to buy a home here, because otherwise you can build as many houses as you want. People want to come here and live. I don't care where they are. California's prices of homes going up. Let's go.
I think I'm a big believer in natural flows of migration. I do agree with you that the reason people want to come to California from Eureka down to San Diego, from Santa Monica to Blythe, is because we're simply the greatest place in the nation to live.
We are.
Perhaps the world. I welcome everyone and anyone who wants to come to California. And ultimately, growth is good.
Yeah.
Now, hoarding wealth is bad.
Yeah.
Growth is good. Taxing excessive wealth is what we need at the federal level first. And then by taxing wealth at the federal level first, then it makes it a more level playing field for all the states. There's another thing, there's lots of studies, right? If you build more housing, especially rental housing, as we've seen in Austin and Portland, rents do go down in real terms. But also as you build more homes for ownership, if you split a lot, and again, this isn't like me making it up, there's so much evidence here in Los Angeles, especially in the neighborhoods I'm in. If you split a lot with a single family home that has 7,500 square feet, single family home, and that home is worth 1.3 million today, and you divide it into 6 townhomes, those 6 townhomes are still worth 1.3 million. Because it's not the land underneath, it truly is the improvement on top of it. And we can talk Georgia's and all these other things too. But no, I think California needs to build everywhere, and we need to build more dense, and we need to infill. And it's also, again, if your concern is the environment, it's not a matter of building more and more out in Riverside and San Bernardino, but infill building in the city of Los Angeles, in the county of Los Angeles, would go a long way to making our environment much safer in the long run.
I thought it was the solve all for AI, but look at, man, we know what happens when Americans have more money. They know we have more money, and all of a sudden the prices on everything just goes up. So if I'm a business and I know that this guy's got $300 more from UBI, I'm raising my prices on everything else. I don't know how to count.
I do. We need a new Teddy Roosevelt. So to me, I have 3 heroes. None of them are super modern, but we need a Teddy Roosevelt to bust the trust, to end all monopolies. And like I said at the beginning, if government is not making markets fair and competitive, then government is failing. We have a failing government, and we've had it since 1980, and we've had it since we turned vice into virtue and said that greed is good. Neoliberalism is a dead ideology, and it is time that we kill it once and for all, and we bring back trust busting. So with competitive markets, prices just can't go up. I'll just add on, we need an FDR because we need to increase the size of our social nets, social programs, including universal education, tax-funded public health care, and UBI. And even without AI, we don't, like, the AI is a secondary consideration. AI is a secondary consideration to UBI. UBI is simply just from day one in creating an economy that works for everyone. And we need a Lyndon B. Johnson. And if we had, and those are the 3, and yes, well, one's a Republican, 2 are Democrats. Those are the people that I'm modeling myself after, because those are the people that honestly made a material difference in the lives of Americans. And we were warned by, gosh, I have to get this straight. It was either FDR, I think it was by FDR, but it might have been Truman, who basically said, look, if you stop giving people secure lives with the government, then people who have the desire to use government against the people will do that. And look where we are today.
I think it's actually very valid points. I mean, like, everything you're saying, again, is kind of the reason that we kind of need to have an independent California Republic. I know, again, like, there is a thought process where we can maybe get through here and just try to reform ourselves out. But again, a lot of these things are really getting up to a tough wall. And again, there has been chances of reform in the past, but, we have to kind of see, like, what the next step could be. I would ask you, when it comes to, like, legislation, is there a kind of like initial bill that you want to put through? I mean, like, again, UBI, for example, was mentioned. Would you try to craft one on a national level? And if so, what would you model it after, if there's any models?
Yeah, I think there's no national model at the scale of a true UBI yet, right? We know there's lots of small trials. We know what just happened, like you said, the artists in Ireland. I think that's great. I do think, again, Norway and Alaska, I guess here's a couple fun side facts to your point. So the great states of Alaska and Texas that claim about how free market they are, they actually charge a higher percentage of mineral rights than the federal government does, or by the way, like California does. And especially Alaska has the Alaska dividend. We need an American dividend. And that American dividend is probably, honestly, about $2,500 per person per year. Per month. It is not a small number. And that dividend comes back from the fact that we create trillions of dollars of wealth. And again, what we've been doing as far as the now 38 trillion, almost $39 trillion in debt, that's not bad. Runaway debt is awful, but it's also debt going into our pockets is okay debt. Debt going into the pockets of 900 people, or really there's 140,000 high worth individuals in the United States. That means they have $30 million in cash in their bank accounts. All of that deficit spending since Ronald Reagan and since every Republican president since him doesn't go into our pockets. And if that debt went into our pockets, that's actually the best debt we can spend. So yeah, the model, sorry, is high taxations on the wealthy.
Yeah.
I think we actually get rid of Social Security, we get rid of SNAP, and everybody gets a direct cash benefit. Liberal is not a dirty word. I am a liberal, and I pride myself on that. And as a liberal, I know that the best person who knows how to spend their money is the individual who receives it, which is actually one of, a quick side, is the solution to homelessness. I believe, and I was talking to someone who works in the city of Los Angeles just a couple of nights ago, in one of our financial departments, and he agrees. In LA County and in the city of LA, between the $1 billion that the city spends and the $1 billion that the county spends, just on services, not including healthcare, not including police, not including fire, not including sanitation, but in direct services to the homeless, we're spending $36,000 per year per homeless person. That's on top of each homeless person pretty much is getting $1,000 a month, either from the state of California or the federal government. We're talking then $4,800 a month that goes directly to them that they can spend however they want. And they're going to spend it not on drugs to kill themselves because they'd already be dead. They're going to spend it on housing and food. And we know that from every single trial of UBI. And if what I'm saying, paying them cash, solves just half the problem, guys and girls, women, men, all of us, we have solved half of the homeless crisis for the same amount we're paying right now. That's the type of imagination. I think we miss imagination in our problem solving. And I hope to get people excited to use our imaginations about what we can do and what our goals are and how we can achieve them.
Thank you so much. I mean, actually, again, you actually emphasize a good point that, again, there's so much poured out to try to treat homelessness or combat it or something like that. And it's so much more expensive trying to treat the problem instead of just, giving the money for it. And then let's see what kind of happens. And most people actually, by UBI studies, kind of find the right path. Most of the time, they don't fall into laziness and drug use or just, destroying their lives. They actually do great things with it. So again, this has been proven pilot programs and everything else out there. So really appreciate that. Again, Loren, thank you again.
I just want to, I don't know what, so honestly, when I have the UBI conversation with people, a lot of it goes oh, people are lazy. Back to me, I'm like, well, how would you spend it? And then you go, oh, I'd spend it right. And then it's just well, you have to actually trust that if you'd spend it right, others would too. You can't say, oh, I would do it right. So I think it's
right.
You have to have the conversation with people. It's not an easy mass conversation because, again, it's easy at the level of mass communications to bury it under lies and hypocrisy and whataboutism. But on a one-to-one conversation, when you actually have that conversation, well, what would you do with the money? Oh, I'd use it to start my own business.
Yeah.
Well, you have to trust that your neighbor would too.
Yeah. And again,
I trust my neighbor to do that.
Yeah, I trust my neighbor to do that too, because I don't know how many times you have conversations with friends and neighbors and I got this great idea. I wish I could do it. I just don't have the time. I don't have the money. And so again, we're kind of killing ourselves. There's so much being lost here with, lost opportunities just because of money and time. So again, Loren, thank you so much.